What is that wonderful sound? Sweet music to my ears. Four things that are great and four things that I hate about FT8. Let's start with hate. Hate number one is how impersonal FT8 is. All you do in an FT8 QSO is pass a signal report. You don't get to hear the voice of the person at the other end. You don't get to hear the style of sending that they do if they're a CW operator. And there's very little opportunity. In fact, there's zero opportunity for a rag chew. Yeah, I know there's JS8, but we're talking about FT8 here. That's what this video is about. Number two. Hate number two is how robotic, how automated FT8 is. It kind of reminds me of people sitting in the pub in front of a poker machine, hitting the button, waiting for that next dopamine hit. It's basically a set and forget mode. You click on the person you want to have the QSO with, and you just wait. Now, hate number three is something that can happen if you do a lot of FT8, and that's getting bored. For the two previous reasons, that can happen with this mode, especially if you use it a lot. At least that's what's happened with me. Hate number four. There is a lot of discussion about the fact that new people coming into the hobby of ham radio are tending to gravitate to the digital modes. The digital modes tend to take up a very narrow bandwidth. They're very, very efficient at usage of the bands. And so there's this problem that can happen that many people will use this mode at the expense of other modes, and the bands will be very empty. Empty bands is hate number four. To put it in materialistic terms, the RF spectrum is limited real estate. God only made so much of it. And if the authorities that be are given the opportunity to say, well, hey, the bands are not busy, we're going to reduce the size of them, that could be a real problem in the future. So it's something that we need to be mindful of. We're at that point in the video where I'm going to ask you to please reach down and hit that subscribe button. Okay, folks, we started negative. Now it's time to say some good stuff about FT8, and there's plenty to say also. One of the great things about FT8 is how quick it is, how quick a QSO is. So if you're limited in time or you're feeling a little bit tired, you can pop into the shack and QSOs can happen really, really quickly, especially if conditions are okay. Now, reason number two why FT8 is great is that it's efficient. So even when the sunspot cycle is really poor, as it has been in the last few years, and the bands are dead because of this, FT8 punches through the noise, punches through poor conditions. Even with a negative 20 dB signal to noise ratio, you can still nab a QSO. It's so efficient, in fact, that this little box here, the QRP Labs QDX, which you can buy built or buy as a kit, and I built this as a kit, it puts out 5 watts, and I've spoken to people in Europe, Italy, Japan, America, you name it, 5 watts, only using an inverted V end-fed half-wave antenna, or my little vertical L antenna that's on the roof here. Look at how
cute this thing is.
I mean, it's pure and utter magic. I cannot tell you how excited I was after building this thing and plugging it in, seeing those stations from all over the world popping up on the screen. It was truly a very exciting moment. Reason number 3 why FT8 is great is that you can do other stuff while you're operating. You can multitask. So quite often, if I come home from work after a hard day slaving away in front of the classroom, and I have to take a little bit of teacher medicine to make myself calm down, I'm given the opportunity to do that in relative silence because there's no side tone on the QDX. I don't hear the noise. I just get to look at the QSO happening, sit back and relax. I can also do a bit of home brewing on the side, waiting to see what happens. So it's a wonderful mode if you want to be a little bit disengaged from it, but still have the pleasure of making a contact. Now, reason number 4 why FT8 is great. And that's that for a very, very small amount of money, you can set up a station that will work DX very efficiently. Like I was saying, this little box here, the QDX, cost me, I'm not actually sure what it is on the side at the moment, but I don't think it was more than 100 or so bucks Australian. With a $50 antenna, you're working overseas, you're working DX stations. Of course, you do need a computer, but let's face it, most people already have that computer, or they can buy themselves a Raspberry Pi. I'm pretty sure you can also use your phone. So there's plenty of opportunities to work and set up a station for a very modest amount of money. Now, just a little bit of background about FT8. FT8 is the shining new bright little bauble of the amateur modes. It came about in June 29th, 2017, and it was developed by Steve Frank, K9AN, and Joe Taylor, K1JT. Hence the FT, because the FT is for Frank and Taylor. Now the 8, you might be asking, what does the 8 stand for? Well, because this mode is a frequency shift keying mode, it actually utilizes 8 tones, and that's why we call it FT8. Now, just as a little aside, Joe Taylor is a PhD physicist who's done a lot of work in radio astronomy, and he's the developer of the wonderful mode WSPR, Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. And we all know that that mode is able to pick up signals that would just not be heard any other way. It's able to dig them out of the mud in the signal to noise ratio. It's just really incredible and amazing technology, and it's wonderful to see that people working in the higher echelons of physics and communications are still hams, and they're still thinking about ways they can take the wonderful things that they've learnt and utilized in their trade and are benefiting the ham community. So all jokes aside, all jokes aside, it's a wonderful mode, and like any mode, it has its pluses and its minuses, and sometimes those pluses and minuses are subjective, and sometimes they exist on the end of a continuum. Like in all the hates and the greats in this video, some of the things actually exist at the same time. For instance, we were talking about how automated and robotic it was and saying that was a hate. But at times when you want to work in a disinterested fashion or do other things, it's a great. So really, the thing we probably want to look at with any mode or any situation on the handbands is that we want to keep that spirit of exploration going, and we also want to make sure that we adventure through all the modes, give them all a try, and work with the ones that you like the most. I'm certain, as a person that was schooled in CW in his original occupation as a ship's radio officer, that Morse code is still going to be around for probably at least as long as I'm alive, I'm hoping, because after 30 years away from the hobby and expecting to come back into the hobby and see absolutely zero amounts of CW happening, especially considering that it's no longer part of the mandatory testing, I was very, very pleased to see that it's still there and that people are still using it, and it's still very popular for POTA and SOTA and all those sorts of activations. So ham radio is a wonderful space to explore communications, and I think we should all be very, very happy to share the space with people who have different interests. And I think it's what makes ham radio a vibrant and exciting hobby. Namaste, fellow hams. Thank you for sticking around right to the end of the video. Hope you've enjoyed it. It took a little bit longer to make this video than I thought it would, because while I was making it, I was watching the waterfall on the the air spy, and I could see a little bit of CEW stuff happening down the bottom of 40 meters. And one of those stations was actually a DX station, but obviously using more power than I'm using here. I'm only QRP at the moment, 5 watts usually on the Oz QRP. So I still had a inkling that there'd be a few people around. So I jumped on the 40 meter band and managed to work Graham VK5GG. So I got a little bit of CW in this evening. But what I really need to do is get more homebrewing happening. So I've been very lazy. Also very busy. It's at that time of the year, at the end of the year, where things go a bit crazy and you just get home and you're just totally exhausted. But I will be doing more homebrew. Trust me on that. I also just had arrive recently something that's been fun to play with. I'm going to show you what that is. I've asked for suggestions how to improve the quality of the output from this channel. One of the suggestions, I asked whether I should get another camera, and I got a comment from a gentleman who said, well, why don't you spend a bit of money on light and on sound? So I thought that is a good suggestion, especially at the present moment with the lighting, because I've been using, old LEDs that I found by the side of the road, and it's always too intense and too harsh. So what I've done is I've got myself, I'll just grab it here, got myself cool studio lighting set up. So at the moment this is on cool lighting, but I can take it to warm, and we can dim it down and make it really moody, or we can go back to 100%, and we can change the light temperature. So there's a hell of a lot of stuff we can do with this lighting. It's been a lot of fun playing with it, and I'll just show you the key light that I'm using presently. And there's our key light. So that is the lighting setup. I'm having to look in the mirror to see what part of the frame is happening, because I don't have a flip out screen on this, because I'm using my iPhone 7 to do all of this, including the editing. Hope you like my painting here. I can't ever get rid of my paintings because no one ever wants them. But this was a painting that's based on a photograph when I went to Thailand, and this monk was actually sleeping in the station, and that's actually a railway station sign that's in Bangkok, near Chinatown. But what I ended up doing was, that word there is a Buddhist term, and I've forgotten what it actually says. And my reading skills have failed me miserably. Anyway, I used to know the Thai alphabet, completely forgotten it now. This gentleman was off to a forest monastery. He had a cut on his leg, and he looked like he was living it quite rough, but they live quite aesthetic lifestyle off in the forests of Thailand. And the monkey here is me, hence the paintbrush and the crazy look on his face. And a lot of the time the Buddhists talk about the monkey mind, which is the mind that runs away. So anyway, sorry about the Buddhist philosophy at the end of this video, but thought I'd share that with you. It's been great having you, and 73, and I shall see you in the next video. This has been The Art of Engineering.